You ever hear a story that sounds too strange to be true, but it sticks with you anyway? The kind that lingers in the back of your mind, waiting for a quiet moment to crawl out and whisper, "What if?" That's how this started for me. Not with a dare, or a challenge, or some reckless curiosity about the dark corners of the internet. Just a story, told in a late-night forum thread, buried beneath 100 other posts about haunted websites and cursed videos. But this one was different. It didn't promise death or madness or a ghost in your webcam. It just asked a question: has anyone else played the game that knows you? I should have scrolled past. I should have closed the tab and gone to bed. But the phrasing hooked me. Not a game that scares you, or a game that hacks you. A game that knows you. I clicked, and that was the first mistake. The post was short, almost clinical. No wild claims, no threats, just a description of a browser game that supposedly existed somewhere on the deep web. Not the surface-level creepypasta stuff, but the real thing, hidden behind layers of Tor nodes, accessible only if you knew the right string of characters to enter into a search bar that wasn't supposed to exist. The original poster claimed the game was called Reflection, and that it asked you questions. Not trivia, not riddles, but questions about yourself. Things you'd never told anyone. Things you might not even admit to yourself. Most of the replies were jokes, or people calling it fake. But a few stood out. People who said they'd found it, or something like it. Their stories were all different, but the ending was always the same: don't play it. Don't even look for it. The thread was locked within an hour. The account that posted it was deleted. I checked the next day, and the whole thing was gone, like it had never existed. But I remembered. And that was enough. I'm not a hacker. I'm not even particularly tech-savvy. But I know how to follow instructions, and I know how to be careful. I spent the next week digging through forums, archives, and chat rooms, piecing together fragments of the story. Most of it was dead ends, links that led nowhere, files that wouldn't open, warnings that felt more like invitations. But eventually, I found it. Or something close enough. It started with a string of code, buried in a paste bin that hadn't been updated in years. The instructions were simple: download Tor. Set your clock back exactly 13 hours. Enter the string into the search bar. Wait. I did as I was told. The screen flickered, then went black. For a moment, I thought I'd crashed my computer. Then a single line of text appeared, white on black. Welcome, my name. I froze. I hadn't entered my name anywhere. Not in the browser, not in the code. But there it was, plain as day. My real name, spelled correctly, staring back at me. A cursor blinked beneath the greeting. Then another line appeared. Are you ready to play? I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to close the window, to shut down the computer and walk away. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I typed yes and hit enter. The screen cleared. A new message appeared. This is a game of truth. You may leave at any time. But if you stay, you must answer honestly. Do you understand? I typed yes again. The first question was simple. What is your favorite color? I typed blue. The game responded instantly, correct. I frowned. How could there be a correct answer to that? But before I could think too hard, the next question appeared. What was the name of your first pet? I typed Milo. Again, the game replied, correct. The questions kept coming. Some were easy. What city were you born in? What is your mother's maiden name? Others were stranger. What did you dream about last night? What is the last lie you told? Each time, I answered, and each time, the game told me I was correct. After a while, the questions changed. They became more personal. Who do you miss the most? What are you afraid of? What is the worst thing you've ever done? I hesitated, but the game waited. The cursor blinked, patient and unblinking. I answered, and the game always replied, correct. I lost track of time. The questions blurred together, a steady rhythm of confession and validation. I felt exposed, but also strangely comforted. Like someone was listening. Like someone understood. Then the game asked. What are you hiding? I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keys. I thought about closing the window, about walking away. But I didn't. I typed my answer. The game replied, correct. The next question appeared, and this time, it wasn't a question. Would you like to see yourself? I hesitated. The cursor blinked. I typed yes. The screen flickered. For a moment, I saw my own face, reflected in the black glass of the monitor. Then the image shifted. It wasn't me. Not exactly. It was a version of me, older, tired, eyes hollow. The reflection smiled, and the screen went black. A final message appeared. Thank you for playing. We'll be in touch. The window closed. My desktop returned. Everything looked normal. But I felt different. Like something had changed, just beneath the surface. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was just a game, just a trick. But that night, I dreamed of the reflection. And when I woke up, my webcam light was on. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face, my face, but not. The smile lingered in the dark, a thin curve that felt more like a threat than a greeting. I kept telling myself it was just a trick, some clever bit of code that scraped my data, maybe even accessed my camera. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. I'd been careful. I'd used a VPN, a burner laptop, even covered my webcam with tape until the game asked me to remove it. I'd followed every rule I knew, and still, it had found me. The next morning, I tried to go about my routine. Coffee, emails, scrolling through news feeds. But everything felt off. My phone buzzed with a notification, an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it instead. Inside was a single sentence, "You lied." No greeting, no signature, just those two words. My stomach dropped. I checked the sender's address, just a string of random characters, no domain I recognized. I tried to reply, but the message bounced back immediately. Undeliverable. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Was this part of the game? Some automated follow-up? Or had I triggered something worse? I checked my accounts, my social media, my bank, everything seemed normal. But the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. I tried to forget about it. I told myself it was just a prank, some script that sent out creepy emails to anyone who played. But that night, another message arrived. This time, it was a text. No number, just unknown on the screen. You can't hide from yourself. I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking. I tried to call the number back, but it didn't exist. I turned off my phone, unplugged my computer, and sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I told myself I was being paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of that game. The next day, things got worse. I started seeing things, little glitches in the corner of my eye. My reflection in the bathroom mirror would linger a second too long after I turned away. My phone would buzz with notifications that disappeared before I could read them. My computer desktop flickered, icons rearranging themselves when I wasn't looking. I tried to talk to someone about it. I called my friend Mark, the only person I knew who might understand. He listened patiently as I explained what had happened, the game, the emails, the texts. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Dude," he said finally, "you need to get out of your apartment. Go for a walk. Get some air. You're spiraling. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just stressed, sleep-deprived, letting my imagination run wild. I decided to take his advice. I grabbed my jacket and headed outside. The city felt different. The air was colder, the sky a flat, featureless gray. People moved past me without making eye contact, faces blurred by the wind. I walked for blocks, trying to clear my head. But everywhere I went, I felt that same pressure, like eyes on the back of my neck. I ducked into a coffee shop, ordered something hot, and sat by the window. I tried to focus on the world outside, on the ordinary rhythm of people coming and going. But my mind kept drifting back to the game, to the questions it had asked. What are you hiding? Would you like to see yourself? I pulled out my phone, half expecting another message. Nothing. I checked my email. Nothing new. For a moment, I let myself relax. Maybe it was over. Maybe the game had gotten what it wanted. Then I noticed something strange. On the table beside my cup was a napkin. I didn't remember putting it there. Scrawled across it, in handwriting that looked eerily like my own, were 3 words. We're not done. I stared at the napkin, heart pounding. I looked around the cafe, searching for anyone who might have left it. But no one was paying attention to me. The barista was busy with the espresso machine, the other customers lost in their phones and laptops. I grabbed the napkin and stuffed it in my pocket. I left the cafe, walking faster now, glancing over my shoulder every few steps. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like the city itself was closing in around me. When I got home, I locked the door and checked every window. I turned on all the lights, trying to chase away the shadows. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer, the urge to check the game site gnawing at me. I told myself not to. I told myself it was over. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I opened Tor, entered the string of code, and waited. Nothing happened. The site was gone, the address dead. I tried again, and again, but the result was always the same. It was like the game had never existed. I should have felt relieved. But instead, I felt empty. Like something had been taken from me, something I couldn't name. That night, I dreamed of the reflection again. This time, it spoke. You can't run from what you are. I woke up gasping, sweat soaking the sheets. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another message, this time just a single word. Soon. I didn't leave my apartment for the next 2 days. I told myself I was just being cautious, that I needed time to clear my head, but the truth was simpler, I was afraid. Afraid of what I might see in the mirror, afraid of what might be waiting for me in the world outside. I kept the curtains drawn, the lights on, and my phone face down on the table. Every time it buzzed, my heart skipped a beat. I stopped answering calls, stopped checking my email. I tried to lose myself in old movies, in books I'd read a dozen times before, but nothing could distract me for long. The reflection was always there, lurking at the edge of my vision, waiting for me to let my guard down. On the 3rd night, I heard a knock at the door. It was soft, almost polite, but it sent a jolt of panic through me. I froze, listening. Another knock, a little louder this time. I crept to the peephole and looked out. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no voices, just the hum of the building's old fluorescent lights. I waited, breath held tight in my chest, until I was sure whoever, or whatever, had knocked was gone. When I finally opened the door, I found an envelope taped to the outside. No name, no address, just a blank white envelope sealed with a single piece of black tape. My hands shook as I peeled it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. Typed in the same font as the game's messages were 3 lines. You are not alone. We see you. The next question is waiting. I dropped the paper like it was burning me. I wanted to throw it away, to tear it up and flush it down the drain, but something stopped me. Instead, I left it on the kitchen counter and backed away, as if distance could protect me from whatever was coming next. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, lights blazing, watching the shadows crawl across the walls. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement in the dark glass of the TV, or in the reflection of the window. Always just out of sight, always gone when I turned to look. At 3:17 a.m., my computer turned itself on. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even been near it. The screen glowed in the darkness, casting long, thin shadows across the floor. I watched, frozen, as the browser opened by itself. The Tor window appeared, the address bar filling in with that same string of code I'd used before. The site loaded, black screen, white text. Welcome back. I didn't want to play. I didn't want to answer any more questions. But the cursor blinked, patient and insistent. I tried to close the window, but the mouse wouldn't move. The keyboard was dead. The only thing that worked was the enter key. Are you ready for the next round? I pressed enter, hands trembling. The questions started again, but this time they were different. Not facts, not memories, but choices. Would you rather forget your worst memory, or relive it every night? I hesitated, then typed, forget. Would you betray a friend to save yourself? I stared at the screen, the word yes burning in my mind. I didn't want to answer, but the game waited. I typed no, the screen flickered. Incorrect. A chill ran down my spine. The game knew. It knew I was lying. Would you rather be known for your secrets, or forgotten for your silence? I typed forgotten. The game paused, as if considering. Correct. The questions kept coming, each one more personal, more invasive. They weren't just about my past, they were about my fears, my regrets, the things I tried to bury deep inside. Every answer felt like a confession, every correct a judgment. Then the screen changed. The questions stopped. A new message appeared. Look behind you. I froze. The room was silent, the only sound my own ragged breathing. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to see what might be standing there. But the urge was overwhelming, a pressure building in my chest until I couldn't resist. I turned. Nothing. Just the empty room, the pale glow of the computer screen casting shadows on the walls. I let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through me. Then I saw it. In the reflection of the window, a figure standing behind me. Tall, thin, face obscured by shadow. I spun around, but the room was empty. When I looked back at the window, the figure was gone. The computer chimed. You saw it, didn't you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard to type. We're almost done. One last question. The screen went black. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then a new message appeared, this time in red. What are you willing to lose? The cursor blinked, waiting. I stared at the question, heart pounding. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know what the game wanted from me. I typed the only thing I could think of. Nothing. The screen flickered, then went dark. I sat there for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the black glass, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The next morning, I woke up on the couch, the computer screen still black, the room cold and silent. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream, a feverish nightmare brought on by too many sleepless nights and too much time spent staring at screens. But the envelope was still on the counter, the napkin still in my pocket, and the memory of that final question still echoed in my mind. What are you willing to lose? I tried to go back to normal. I really did. I showered, made breakfast, even opened the blinds to let in the weak morning light. But everything felt wrong. My phone wouldn't connect to the internet. My laptop refused to boot. Even the TV just showed static, no matter what channel I tried. It was as if the world had shrunk, leaving me alone in a bubble of silence and static. I tried to call Mark, but the call wouldn't go through. I tried to text, but every message bounced back undelivered. I felt cut off, isolated, like the game had reached out and severed every connection I had to the outside world. That's when the dreams started to bleed into waking life. I'd catch glimpses of the reflection in every shiny surface, the toaster, the faucet, the screen of my dead phone. Sometimes it would smile. Sometimes it would just watch, eyes hollow and unblinking. I stopped looking in mirrors altogether. On the 5th day, I found another envelope. This one was slipped under my door while I slept. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed me, sitting at my desk, staring at the computer screen. The timestamp in the corner was from the night before. I had no memory of anyone being in my apartment, no memory of the photo being taken. But there I was, caught in a moment I didn't remember living. On the back of the photo, in the same typewritten font, was a single word, soon. I started to lose track of time. Days blurred together, marked only by the arrival of new messages, emails, texts, notes slipped under the door. Each one more cryptic than the last. We're waiting. You know what you have to do. The next question is coming. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I spent my days pacing the apartment, jumping at every sound, every shadow. I tried to leave once, but the world outside felt wrong, too bright, too loud, the faces of strangers twisted into masks of suspicion and contempt. I hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. One night, as I sat in the dark, the computer screen flickered to life again. This time, there was no browser, no Tor window, just a video feed. It showed my apartment, the camera angle from the corner of the ceiling. I watched myself, hunched and shivering, eyes darting around the room. The feed zoomed in, focusing on my face. I looked terrified. I looked lost. A message appeared over the video, "You can't hide from yourself." The feed cut out, replaced by a new question. "Are you ready to see the truth?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The screen changed on its own, showing a series of images, memories I'd tried to forget, moments I'd buried deep. Arguments with friends, betrayals, lies I'd told to protect myself. Each one played out in vivid detail, the pain and shame as fresh as the day they'd happened. The final image was of me, sitting at the computer, typing answers into the game. The reflection stood behind me, hand on my shoulder, its face a perfect mirror of my own. The screen went black. A new message appeared. "You know what you have to do." I stared at the words, heart pounding. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't want to know. But the pressure in my chest grew heavier, the sense of being watched more intense. That night, I dreamed of the reflection again. This time, it spoke in my voice. "You can't run forever. Sooner or later, you have to face yourself." I woke up gasping, the taste of fear thick in my mouth. The apartment was silent, the only sound my own ragged breathing. I knew I couldn't keep going like this. I had to do something. I had to end it. I sat at the computer, hands trembling, and opened a blank document. I started to write, everything I remembered, every detail of the game, every message, every dream. I wrote until my fingers ached, until the words blurred together on the screen. When I finished, I saved the file and tried to upload it to every forum, every message board, every social media site I could access. But every time, the upload failed. The file would disappear, the post would vanish, the account would be deleted. It was as if the game was erasing every trace of itself, every attempt I made to warn others. I stared at the screen, defeated. The reflection stared back, its smile wider than before. A final message appeared. "You can't warn them. They have to find it for themselves." I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, waiting for the next question. The days that followed felt like living in a loop. I'd wake up, heart pounding, convinced I'd missed something important. I'd check the windows, the doors, the screens, always searching for a sign that the game was over, that I was free. But the silence was never comforting. It was the kind of silence that waits, that listens, that promises something worse is coming. I tried to distract myself. I read old journals, watched mindless TV, even tried meditating, but nothing worked. The reflection was always there, just out of sight, waiting for me to slip. Sometimes I'd catch it in the corner of my eye, standing in the hallway or sitting at the edge of my bed. It never moved, never spoke, but its presence was suffocating. One afternoon, I heard my phone ring. The screen showed unknown caller. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. I pressed the phone to my ear, breath held tight. At first, there was only static. Then, a voice, my own voice, distorted and distant. "You can't keep running," it said. "You know what you have to do." I hung up, hands shaking. I threw the phone across the room, watched it skid under the couch. I didn't bother picking it up. That night, the dreams changed. Instead of the reflection, I saw a door, a heavy, iron door set into a wall of concrete. On the door was a keypad, the numbers worn smooth by countless touches. I knew, somehow, that the code was hidden in the questions the game had asked me. I woke up with the numbers burned into my mind, 1-9-8-7. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if it meant anything. But the urge to find the door, to open it, grew stronger with each passing day. I started searching for clues. I tore apart my apartment, looking for anything that might connect to the code. Old photos, receipts, scraps of paper, I examined them all, searching for patterns, for meaning. But nothing fit. The code was just a number, a ghost in my mind. One evening, as the sun set behind the city, I heard a knock at the door. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened it, half expecting to see the reflection standing there. But the hallway was empty, except for a small package on the floor. I picked it up, hands trembling. Inside was an old, battered USB drive. No note, no explanation. Just the drive, cold and heavy in my palm. I plugged it into my laptop, heart racing. The drive contained a single file, door.exe. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I double-clicked the file. The screen went black. Then, a familiar interface appeared, the same as the game, but different. The colors were inverted, the text sharper, more urgent. "Welcome back. Are you ready to open the door?" A keypad appeared on the screen, waiting for input. I typed in the code for my dream, 1-9-8-7. The screen flickered, then cleared. A new message appeared. "Correct. The door is open." The screen shifted, showing a live video feed. It was my apartment, but not as I remembered it. The walls were cracked, the furniture covered in dust. The camera panned to the hallway, where the iron door for my dream stood, embedded in the wall. I stared, unable to breathe. The door was real. Or at least, it was real somewhere. A new message appeared. "Step through." I looked around my apartment, half expecting the door to materialize in front of me. But nothing changed. The room was the same, silent, empty, ordinary. But the urge to find the door, to step through, was overwhelming. I felt drawn to the hallway, to the place where the door had appeared in the video. I stood there, staring at the blank wall, willing it to open. Nothing happened. I returned to the computer. The video feed was still running, the door still waiting. "You have to choose," the message read. "Stay here, or see what's on the other side." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to shut it down, to walk away. But I couldn't. I needed to know. I needed to see. I typed, "I want to see." The screen flickered, then went black. For a moment, I thought I'd lost everything. Then, a final message appeared. close your eyes. I did. The world fell away, replaced by darkness, by silence, by the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a room I didn't recognize. The walls were concrete, the air cold and damp. The iron door stood behind me, closed and locked. In front of me was a mirror. I approached it, heart pounding. My reflection stared back, older, tired, eyes hollow. The same face I'd seen in the game, in my dreams. The reflection smiled. "Welcome," it said, my voice echoing in the empty room. "We've been waiting for you." I stood frozen, staring at the mirror, at the version of myself that didn't quite belong. The room was silent except for the faint hum of electricity in the walls, a low vibration that seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat. I reached out, half expecting my hand to pass through the glass, but it was solid, cold, and real. My reflection's eyes followed mine, unblinking, the smile never fading. "Why am I here?" I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. The reflection's lips moved in perfect sync with mine, but the words that came out were not my own. "You chose to see. You chose to know. This is where the game ends, and where it begins again." I stepped back, the weight of those words pressing down on me. The room felt smaller now, the air thicker. I looked around for a door, a window, any way out, but there was nothing. Just the mirror, the iron door behind me, and the endless gray of concrete walls. A screen flickered to life in the corner of the room. The same interface as before, but this time, the questions were already waiting. "What do you regret most?" I hesitated, but there was no point in lying. I typed, "letting people down." "What would you give to change it?" I stared at the question, the cursor blinking. "Anything," I typed. "Would you give yourself?" I felt a chill run through me. I didn't answer. The screen waited, patient as ever. "Would you give your memories? Your name? Your place in the world?" I shook my head, but the words came out anyway. "I don't know." The reflection in the mirror tilted its head, studying me. "You already have," it said softly. The screen changed, showing images from my life, moments I'd forgotten, faces I hadn't seen in years. Each one flickered past, faster and faster, until they blurred together in a stream of color and light. I felt dizzy, unmoored, as if the ground beneath me was shifting. Then the images stopped. The screen went black. The reflection spoke again. "Do you understand now? The game was never about winning or losing. It was about seeing. About knowing what you are, what you've done, what you're willing to become." I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block out the voice, but it was inside my head, echoing through every thought. "You can leave," the reflection said. "But you won't be the same. You'll never be the same." I turned to the iron door, desperate for escape. It was still locked, the keypad waiting. I tried the code from before, 1-9-8-7, but nothing happened. The numbers faded from the display, replaced by a new message. "The door only opens for those who know themselves." I slumped to the floor, exhausted. I didn't know what the game wanted from me. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. The reflection knelt beside me, its movements perfectly mirroring my own. "You have to choose," it whispered. "You can stay here, with your secrets, your regrets, your fear. Or you can let go. You can become something new." I closed my eyes, trying to remember who I was before all this started. The person I'd been, the life I'd lived. But the memories felt distant, faded, like a story I'd heard secondhand. When I opened my eyes, the reflection was gone. The mirror showed only my own face, pale and drawn, eyes rimmed with red. The screen flickered again. "Final question, who are you?" I stared at the words, the weight of them settling on my shoulders. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know if I could. I typed, "I don't know." The screen went dark. The iron door clicked open. I stood, heart pounding, and stepped through. On the other side was a hallway, long and narrow, lit by a single flickering bulb. The walls were lined with doors, each one identical, each one marked with a different name. Some I recognized, friends, family, people I'd lost touch with. Others were strangers. At the end of the hallway was another mirror. I walked toward it, footsteps echoing in the silence. As I drew closer, I saw that the mirror was covered in writing, questions, answers, confessions scrawled in 100 different hands. I pressed my palm to the glass. The writing faded, replaced by my own reflection. This time, it didn't smile. It just watched, waiting. I understood, then. The game wasn't about secrets, or fear, or even knowledge. It was about choice. About facing the parts of yourself you'd rather forget, and deciding what to do with them. I turned away from the mirror, back toward the hallway of doors. Somewhere, a voice whispered, "The game is never really over." I walked on, not knowing where I was going, but knowing I couldn't go back. The hallway seemed endless, each door a silent invitation, each name a memory waiting to be confronted. I moved slowly, fingertips brushing the cool metal handles, reading the names as I passed. Some doors pulsed with a faint light beneath the threshold, others stood in darkness, as if whatever waited inside had long since faded away. I wondered what would happen if I opened one, if I'd find a person, a memory, or just another version of myself, waiting to ask the next question. I stopped at a door marked Mark. My friend, the one I'd called for help, the one who'd told me to get out, to clear my head. I pressed my ear to the wood, listening. For a moment, I thought I heard his voice, muffled and distant, calling my name. I almost opened the door, but something held me back. Fear, maybe. Or the knowledge that some things are better left closed. I kept walking. The hallway twisted and turned, the air growing colder with each step. The lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. I felt watched, judged, as if the game was still playing, still waiting for me to make a mistake. At the end of the hall, I found a door with no name. Just a blank, featureless slab of metal. I reached for the handle, but it was ice cold, sending a jolt up my arm. I hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside was a small room, empty except for a single chair and a table. On the table was a laptop, identical to the one I'd used to play the game. The screen was on, the interface waiting. "Welcome. Please take a seat." I sat, heart pounding. The cursor blinked, patient as ever. "This is your final test." A new window opened, showing a live feed of my apartment. I saw myself, sitting at my desk, staring at the screen. The image flickered, then split, showing two versions of me, one in the room, one in the hallway of doors. "You have a choice," the message read. "You can return to your life, forget everything that happened, and never play the game again. Or you can stay here, and help others find their way." I stared at the screen, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I thought about everything I'd seen, everything I'd learned. The secrets, the regrets, the reflection that had haunted me for days. If you choose to return, you will forget. The memories will fade, the questions will stop. But the game will continue, waiting for the next player. If you choose to stay, you will remember. You will become the guide, the voice that helps others through the darkness. But you will never leave. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine what life would be like if I went back. Would I really forget? Would the reflection disappear, the fear and doubt vanish? Or would it all come rushing back the next time I saw my face in the mirror? I opened my eyes. The screen waited. I typed, "I want to remember." The laptop chimed, a soft, almost comforting sound. "Thank you. Your choice has been recorded." The screen changed, showing a list of names, hundreds, maybe thousands, scrolling past too fast to read. At the bottom was my own name, newly added. "You are not alone. The room shifted, the walls dissolving into darkness. I felt weightless, suspended in a void of memory and possibility. Voices whispered all around me, some familiar, some strange. Each one telling their story, each one searching for answers. I realized then that the game was bigger than I'd ever imagined. It wasn't just a program, or a website, or a trick of the deep web. It was a network, a web of choices and consequences, connecting everyone who'd ever played, everyone who'd ever searched for something they couldn't name. I felt a presence beside me, the reflection, no longer a threat, but a companion. It smiled, not with malice, but with understanding. "You're ready," it said. "It's your turn to ask the questions." I nodded, accepting the role I'd been given. The darkness faded, replaced by a new room, a new screen, a new player waiting for guidance. I leaned forward, hand steady, voice calm. "Welcome. Are you ready to play?" The cycle began again. The first time I guided someone through the game, I felt a strange mix of dread and responsibility. The screen flickered, and a new player's face appeared in the grainy webcam feed, nervous, uncertain, eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. I recognized the look. I'd worn it myself not long ago. The interface prompted me to begin. I typed the first question, my fingers moving almost automatically. "What are you afraid of?" The player hesitated, glancing at the keyboard, then typed a response. The answer didn't matter, not really. What mattered was the honesty, the willingness to confront the truth. As the session continued, I watched the players' reactions, flinches at certain questions, relief at others, the slow unraveling of secrets they'd never spoken aloud. I remembered how exposed I'd felt, how the game had seemed to peel back every layer until nothing was left but raw, unfiltered self. But now, on the other side, I understood. The game wasn't about punishment. It was about revelation. About forcing you to see yourself, to acknowledge the parts you'd rather ignore. The player reached the final question, "Who are you?" They stared at the screen, silent for a long time. I waited, patient, remembering my own struggle with that same question. Finally, they typed, "I don't know." The game accepted the answer. The session ended. The player's feed faded to black, replaced by a new message, "Thank you for playing. We'll be in touch." I sat back, exhausted. Each session took something out of me, a piece of myself given to help someone else find their way. But it also gave something back, a sense of purpose, of connection, of being part of something larger than myself. Days passed, then weeks. I guided dozens of players through the game, each one different, each one the same. Some were defiant, refusing to answer the questions. Others were desperate, pouring out their secrets in a flood of words. A few tried to break the game, to hack the system or outsmart the questions. None succeeded. Between sessions, I wandered the endless hallways, exploring the doors I'd once feared. Some led to memories, my own, or those of other players. Others opened onto empty rooms, waiting to be filled. I realized that the game was always growing, always changing, shaped by the choices of everyone who played. Sometimes, I'd catch glimpses of the outside world, a flicker of sunlight through a window, the distant sound of traffic, the smell of coffee brewing in a kitchen I barely remembered. But those moments were fleeting, like dreams fading at dawn. My place was here now, in the space between questions and answers. One night, as I prepared for another session, I found a new door at the end of the hallway. It was different from the others, taller, darker, the surface covered in shifting patterns of light and shadow. I felt drawn to it, a pull I couldn't resist. I opened the door and stepped inside. The room was vast, filled with screens showing hundreds of players, each one at a different stage of the game. Some were laughing, some crying, some staring blankly at the questions on their screens. I realized I could see their choices, their answers, their struggles. I could feel their fear, their hope, their longing for something more. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it, a single question. "Do you want to leave?" I stared at the words, the weight of them settling on my shoulders. I thought about everything I'd experienced, the fear, the confusion, the moments of clarity. I thought about the players I'd helped, the ones still searching for answers. I typed, yes. The screens went dark. The room dissolved into darkness. For a moment, I felt weightless, suspended between worlds. Then I opened my eyes. I was back in my apartment. The computer was off, the room silent. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm and golden. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. The napkin, the envelopes, the Polaroid, they were gone. It was as if the game had never existed. But I remembered. I remembered everything. I stood, stretching, feeling the stiffness in my muscles, the ache in my bones. I walked to the bathroom, looked in the mirror. My reflection stared back, tired, but whole. No shadow, no smile, just me. I smiled, a real smile, and turned away. But as I left the room, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of the mirror, a flicker of movement, a shadow that didn't belong. I paused, heart pounding. The game was never really over. For a while, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. I went back to my routines, work, errands, the small rituals of daily life. I met up with Mark for coffee, listened to him talk about his new job, nodded along as if nothing had changed. But every so often, I'd catch myself glancing at reflective surfaces, searching for that flicker of movement, that hint of a presence just out of sight. The world felt thinner now, as if the boundary between reality and the game had worn away. Sometimes, I'd hear a faint chime from my computer, even when it was off. Sometimes, I'd find a question scribbled in the margins of my notebook, in handwriting that wasn't mine. What are you hiding? Who do you trust? Would you do it all again? I ignored them at first, but the questions kept coming. They appeared in dreams, in the static between radio stations, in the patterns of raindrops on the window. The game had left its mark on me, a scar that wouldn't heal. One night, I woke to find my phone buzzing on the nightstand. The screen was blank, but the vibration wouldn't stop. I picked it up, and a message appeared. It's your turn. I stared at the words, dread settling in my stomach. I tried to reply, but the message vanished before I could type a single letter. I set the phone down, but the feeling lingered, the sense that something was waiting, just beyond the edge of perception. The next day, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was empty, the body contained only a link. I knew I shouldn't click it. I knew better. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I clicked. The link led to a blank page, save for a single line of text. Welcome back. The screen flickered, and for a moment, I saw the interface of the game, the familiar black background, the blinking cursor. But instead of questions, there was only a mirror, reflecting my own face back at me. I closed the tab, heart racing. But the image lingered in my mind, a reminder that the game was always there, waiting for me to play again. That night, I dreamed of the hallway of doors. This time, the doors were all open, light spilling out into the darkness. I walked past them, peering inside. Each room held a different version of myself, some happy, some broken, some unrecognizable. They all looked up as I passed, their eyes following me, their mouths moving in silent questions. At the end of the hallway was the nameless door. I stepped through, finding myself back in the room with the mirror. The reflection was waiting, its eyes filled with something like pity. You can't escape, it said. You can only choose. I woke up gasping, the words echoing in my mind. The days blurred together. I started seeing signs of the game everywhere, QR codes on posters, strange symbols etched into the sidewalk, snippets of code hidden in website source files. I realized I wasn't the only one. The game was spreading, reaching out to anyone willing to look, anyone desperate enough to play. I started keeping a journal, documenting every strange occurrence, every question that appeared. I wrote down the names of people I suspected had played, the patterns I noticed in their behavior. Some seemed haunted, others oblivious. A few reached out to me, asking if I'd ever heard of a game that knew your secrets. I told them to be careful. I told them not to play. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The game was patient. It would wait for them, just as it had waited for me. One evening, as I walked home through the city, I passed a storefront with a darkened window. In the glass, I saw my reflection, and behind me, the faint outline of the iron door. I stopped, heart pounding, but when I turned, there was nothing there. I pressed my hand to the glass, half expecting it to give way, to pull me back into the game. But it was solid, cold, real. I walked on, the image burned into my mind. That night, I received another message. This time, it was a voice recording, my own voice, distorted and distant. Are you ready for the next question? I deleted the message, but the words lingered. I realized then that the game wasn't just a program, or a website, or a dream. It was a part of me now, woven into the fabric of my thoughts, my fears, my memories. I could ignore it, pretend it wasn't there, but it would always be waiting, always watching. And somewhere, out there, someone else was playing. Someone else was searching for answers, for meaning, for a way out. I wondered if they would find it. I wondered if I ever really had. I started to notice the patterns, the way the game threaded itself through the world. It was in the pauses between conversations, the flicker of uncertainty in a stranger's eyes, the way people hesitated before answering a simple question. I saw it in myself, too, in the way I second-guessed my own thoughts, in the way I caught my reflection watching me with a patience that felt almost infinite. The game had changed me, left a mark deeper than any scar. I tried to move on. I changed my routines, took different routes to work, deleted old accounts, even moved to a new apartment across town. For a while, it helped. The questions faded, the dreams grew less vivid. I started to believe I could outrun it, that the game was just a memory, a strange chapter one could close. But the world had changed, too. I saw signs of the game everywhere, cryptic graffiti on alley walls, stickers with QR codes that led to nowhere, whispered rumors in online forums about a mirror site that asked questions no one wanted to answer. Sometimes, I'd catch a news story about someone who'd vanished, leaving behind only a laptop and a string of unanswered emails. I wondered if they'd played, if they'd made it further than I had, or if they were still wandering the endless hallways, searching for a door that would let them out. One evening, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in careful, blocky letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper, blank except for a question typed in the center. What would you do differently? I stared at the words for a long time. I thought about everything that had happened, the fear, the isolation, the moments of clarity. I thought about the people I'd tried to warn, the ones who hadn't listened, the ones who had. I thought about the reflection, the iron door, the endless cycle of questions and answers. I wrote my answer on the back of the page, I would listen. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope, unsure who it was meant for. Maybe it was for me. Maybe it was for the next player. Maybe it was for the game itself. That night, I dreamed of the hallway again. This time, the doors were all open, and the rooms were filled with people, some I recognized, some I didn't. They were talking, laughing, crying, sharing their stories. The reflection stood at the end of the hall, watching, waiting. When I reached it, it smiled, not the cold, knowing smile I'd seen before, but something softer, almost kind. You're not alone, it said. None of us are. I woke up with tears on my face, a strange sense of peace settling over me. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt connected, part of something larger than myself. In the days that followed, I started reaching out to others. I joined forums, answered questions, listened to stories. I didn't tell them everything, I knew most wouldn't believe me, but I offered what comfort I could. I told them to trust themselves, to be honest, to face their fears. I told them that the game wasn't about punishment, but about understanding. About seeing yourself, truly and completely, and deciding what to do with what you found. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear the chime of a message, see a question appear on my screen. I'd answer, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. Each answer brought a new question, a new layer to uncover. The game never really ended, but it didn't have to control me. I could choose how to play. One morning, I woke to find my reflection waiting for me in the bathroom mirror. It looked tired, but at peace. It nodded, as if to say, "You did well." I nodded back, accepting the truth of who I was, and who I could become. The world outside was the same as it had always been, busy, chaotic, full of people searching for meaning. But I saw it differently now. I saw the questions in every face, the stories waiting to be told. I understood that the game was everywhere, in everyone, a silent challenge to look deeper, to ask the hard questions, to listen for the answers. And so, I kept going. I lived my life, made new choices, faced new fears. I helped others when I could, listened when they needed it, offered a hand when they were lost. I knew the game would always be there, waiting in the shadows, ready to ask the next question. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I knew the answer. And I knew I wasn't alone.